So front-end dev, so many frameworks to know what's happening in life, how many frameworks are changing every week, what gets updated, etc. Trying to catch up all of those and trying to share my learning journey as a form of technical blogs. Along with that, I also do open source. I am associated with a community called React Play. And yeah, I got an opportunity to be one of the speakers today over here. So that's a bit about me. You can reach out to me on any of these social media platforms. At the rate Supmin is my handle. Okay, I would like to get started with a question here. How many of you are building UI apps? When I mean web app, building UI web apps, and then trying general day job of a front end dev. But I just want to get a count how many of you are actively doing it. Nice. And I'm sure you in styling library or maybe doing it all on your own, vanilla CSS, anything could be there. Have you also come across different teams who are doing a similar job as yours, but for a different product? It's a very common scene across in bigger orgs for sure. They might be building products in different frameworks. Some might be building in React, some might be building in Angular, etc. And a common thing that you see is you'll have to get at least a CTA on your UI. So you're trying to replicate that button on your own. You're adding something towards. You're just using whatever styling library they're using before. What happens here is a familiar pattern seems to be looked at here. So you see different teams, they're using different frameworks. And although they try to maintain everything to be perfect, maybe they try to make the look and feel very similar, behind the scenes, there would be something which is slightly off or behaves a little different than the other. And of course, there's duplication of work. So you might want to add a new accordion to your component, which that team already had, but you can't pull it in because you're in a different framework. So with this, the struggle continues where your UI is slowly changing, getting inconsistent, and the user's trust begins to hamper because they're trying to depend on, they're trying to connect between the two products and say, okay, these might be of the same brand, but why are they looking different? And of course, if there are new team members joining in, they would say, okay, if they're moving from that team to this team, they might have to relearn the whole thing. And last but not the least, in terms of accessibility, that is something which is given least priority. I'm not sure why this is still underrated, but yeah, it's lost in transition. So we at Cisco also faced a similar problem. And what we tried to do was address this issue. So we as a team sat together, spoke to all the products and understood where are the pain points and how we could try and bring in something which is common and unified. And with that, we launched Momentum Design System. So I am working with the Momentum Designs engineering team, the core team. And what is Momentum Design System is in terms of we're trying to create a shared design system so that it's going to be a single source of truth. And this would contain all the building blocks for literally every product within the Cisco frame. So if I'm not sure how many products you guys would be aware of, but one of the top one is the WebEx calling meeting app. So that is already using Momentum Design, and we are slowly migrating the same design UI towards all the other products. So our, I would say, an easy correlation to give you guys here is how Google has done it. You have Google's Material UI, and even without showing their logo across anywhere, you open a Google page, you know this is the material, you know this is the styling. So that's our aim too. We want to bring Cisco to one vision, and with that, we brought the momentum design system. A little bit about, oops, little bit about what our USPs are. Firstly, this being October month, it's Hacktober, open source, etc. Momentum design is open source. Uh, and all the designers within our team have rigorously sat down and discussed with all the products available in order to figure out what is the best solution we could take in terms of design consistency. So that there's a lot of meticulous work gone behind the scenes, and we've got a perfect pixel, perfect UI, and which in turn gives us the consistent UI across all the products. The other point that I am proud to present here is all the components within the momentum design system are and they support the YCAG's 2.1 AA standards. A lot of efforts have gone in behind this. It's only when you start working with accessibility, you figure out why do you really need it and how are you making that impact. And that was my moment there to figure out how accessibility is important. So yeah, we've got about a couple of close to 100 components in place, and we're still going on. This has been a journey for about a year around. We're still growing. Little bit about what we're doing. How did we build this? Is using the web components. If you're not aware of a web component, that is how it would look. So that's exactly a custom component how it would look like. In definition, a web component is a custom element, very similar to how your normal HTML tags behave. But then internally, we are putting the logic of how the component behaves. So you might know if you take an example of an input select, there's a drop down, you click in, there are options, you use the select and the build them in. Really, there is a logic of them using web components as well. Main So yeah, web components are supported with modern browsers. Now that all the browsers are passing the support for it, it's safe enough to use it. And any frame you can work with any framework. That was one of the key points why we decided to go with web components. And the main crux of how we use web components and what do we use within them is the concept of a shadow root and slots. So if you're coming from the React background, slots is easy to understand in terms of your children props. So you have the props called children within React, and the way you use them is the same as how you use slots. Slight addition here, you can use default slots or named slots. I can show you the example further. And the concept of a shadow DOM. What that means is anything you put in within your web component, you can use your normal uh, native HTML elements there, and they continue to become an encapsulated form of what you're using. So the outside world, any HTML code outside of this custom element does not hamper it. Even in terms of styling, you go about using styles, classes, etc. within your shadow root. It doesn't leak out. Rather, or also it doesn't let you, if you have a common class name clashes, all that is like avoided just because of the shadow DOM in place. So yeah, I'm not sure if you guys have worked with web components, but how many of you are aware or maybe not like building it, but used it across many of your apps? You got a chance to use it? Nice. Was it with native or on a framework like React or Angular? Native ones on the framework? Okay, good. I'm glad some of you are aware then. Uh, so if you're aware of building in or you know how we build in web components, one of the famous ones have different ways to do components. There is stencil, there's lit, there's view, and many more. Stencil being on the top, and lit was something which is fairly new. And we in the engineering team were deciding between which one to go with based on the requirements that we have, the number of components or the type of components that we wanted to build. And after a lot of research numbers in terms of performance and package sizes, etc., Lit decided to be the winner. So, what is Lit? Lit is a lightweight, simple, and a very small library which is created by Google, and they are maintaining it as well. How React try to declare, create a declarative syntax for JavaScript. Lit try to do that for web components. I'm not sure if you can see this. I'll show you the example through the code as well. But what's happening here is You have these decoratives in place. The simple way to create is with the custom element decorative, whatever name that you pass, that becomes your element's name. So there's simple greeting here, and that's how you consume it. There are these static styles, which I said would encapsulate limited only to the scope of the component. And lastly, you have certain properties which are declared as reactive properties. So if you make a change over here, your code knows that change. So something like a use state within React what to do. And the render is very similar to your class components. The render function, whatever you add with that is rendered across on your screen. Yeah. So with this example, you're setting the name to world, and here you're returning hello at dollar world, so it's going to say hello world. So a brief example of how they. Now I would like to walk through upon a bit about how we have built the momentum design system. Hmm. So this is a mono repo. We have a couple of packages in, but I'll be mainly focusing on the components here. So we do have a fetch documentation, etc. This is the momentum design components. Uh, as I said, we have a couple of components. So all of these are like a list of components. One example that I would like to take here is very simple, the button. So we're using TypeScript in turn. This is built with Lit along with TypeScript. We have this extensive TS docs mentioned here. Uh, these are the different slots that I mentioned about. So if I'm not passed in anything here, this is the default slot which takes in the text value. And then there are, yeah, let me show you this. We've just added a wrapper of a button. So I'm creating a skeleton of a button and then wrapping it around with stylings. What I want you to see here is searching for the render. So the render here just has slots. So this acts just like a wrapper. So I'm saying there is a button simple which only takes children and does nothing else. And then I'm inheriting this class along with certain mixins to add in more properties. You see there are different properties here which are a part of that button component. If I go into buttons render, you would see more such things. There are more slots, there are more logic in here. But if you notice, you don't see anything as the native button here. We're not using the native button component in itself to wrap it around and just add styles onto it. We've deliberately taken this approach. This is called the host area approach. When I'm saying host, any web component, whatever you see on the render, this top point is your host. All of these are children within the host. So we're trying to convert this host component in itself to act like a button. It's more like reinventing the wheel in a matter, but we took this decision consciously for various reasons. And the way we are converting this into a button by setting the role on the host. If you see here, I'm overriding the role, and then the default property has the button in place. So just going through on how it looks. We are using Storybook in terms of documentation as well as representing a demo of how our components work, because mostly the component library will be used by products within to migrate towards this design system. So we want to make it easier for the engineers in themselves to be able to understand what all are there, what all can a component do, and how can you consume it across. So yeah, our documentation is extensive. We have consumption, styling, attributes, etc. Since we're talking about button, this is my documentation for a particular component for button per se. We're talking about different variants, colors, styles, and types. So if I go in here with Storybook, you get access to the way we've set the Storybook along with TypeScript and documentation. We are able to get this tabular format in. With this, you can play around. So let's say I want to change my size, the color, whatever changes you're doing in here would automatically reflect at this point. So anybody consuming it could just add in the exact variant of how do you need the component and take the code from here. Another example is I'm just taking another example of a component, not to show you everything, but with respect to card. Why did I point this out? Is here you have a lot of different slots in place. So in the documentation, if you scroll down and see, mention about the different slots which you could use. What that means is if you see the code over here, there's a slot body mentioned. So whatever text or the HTML element that you pass in within that particular slot body would automatically fall into wherever it has been styled and added as a fallback. So this was just like a brief understanding of what did we do, why did we do. We built in lit components, we made it framework agnostic. It was lightweight, our bundle size is also all good. But using web components has its own challenges. We ultimately wanted to support it to be easily accessible on other frameworks as well. That's why we went with this. But since this is a React meetup, I'll be talking specifically about React app. When we try to migrate it onto React application, these were some of the challenges that we faced. So in React, our props and attributes are not exactly one is to one with respect to how the web components work. You pass this as a string, whereas there you can also accept booleans, numbers, and even objects and arrays. Second thing was with respect to event handling. Your native HTML, you just say click and then add in actions. Whereas in React, you add camel casing in place. It has to be specifically styled. You'll have to have those curly braces in for styling, etc. And last but not the least, we spoke about Shadow DOM, how it restricted the styles not to pierce out, but it also restricted not to like add in styles from the top. I know this is controversial. We would say that we're building in a design system so that the component looks in a certain way, but there could be exceptions where they want to tweak in the style a little bit here and there. If you make it rigid and not let them do it, that would be a difficult thing for us who is building the component. So let's understand how did we try to overcome through these challenges. I'll go in the reverse manner. So let's see how we worked under the styles. We spoke about styles being written using classes or the normal inline styles, right? There's also this concept of CSS parts. So what CSS parts does is, so you see here, I'm named in parts. It's a way of providing an identification very similar to a class name, but then with the parts in place, a parent component can easily pierce through within the shadow DOM in terms of styling. And how would you be able to do it? Very simply put, this is your selector that you use. So the host over here is because it's a web component. In terms of using it from maybe a React app, would be whatever you name the component or the class name against that component, and then you pass in the part against it. So that resolves our styling and theme issues. We also got the theme provider in. So in terms of the theming issues, just by wrapping it around very similar to how we do it on a React app, that worked. The next one, sure. Oh no, these are not class-based components. I was just giving a reference towards class-based. In lit, this is how you build it. This is the syntax of lit where you're doing a. This is the JavaScript code. So this is a plain JavaScript class, nothing to do with React. Yes, a vanilla JavaScript class, which is wrapped around with the lit library. And in lit, if I go into, I think I have it here, but we've done an encapsulation of the lit component as well. So we have built in this via lit element. Oh no, it's nothing about the way we are creating a React component. So here we are using plain old JavaScript. along with in JavaScript, everything is an object, and you can define prototypes for how do you want to set up a class, right? So you have something called as a lit element as a class, which gives you all of these properties in place, which I spoke about. You can go through all of these. So you have a register, how you register a component, and in the exact same manner, in lit, you have the function which is called render. Whatever you pass in as a return out of that render function is generating your view. I'm talking nothing about React. I'm just giving you correlation with respect to React and all. Absolutely. Yes. Yes, yes. True. Agreed. In terms of React, I agree. We are just, I'm just giving you a comparison of connecting a web component with lit in, there's no concept of a class-based or function-based component here. This is a lit component. Lit is built on vanilla JS. It is also a library, is what I'm saying. So the library in itself is being built in such a manner. Yeah, thanks. So yeah, that was the first one with respect to styling. In terms of event handling, this was where maybe we try to do our ways of uh, adding in a bit of the logic. And this was also a point why we took the support of lit. So if I show you before getting into the code, I would like to show you the disk that we generate. This is the disk of my uh, web component. So this was a TypeScript file what is being rendered here, and the JS file compiled file is in the disk. So nothing new here. The code looks exactly the same, except for it's in JavaScript. But if we had to ask the React folks to use this, you need to use it as a simple web component, which is like using the element in itself, which hampers your syntaxing ahead. So in order to provide them and support to React component in itself, we have another folder for React with all of these components Reactified. And how did we do that? Is lit provided us with generate lit React. You have something called as create component, and through that you pass in the tag name, the web component in itself, which language are you using, and all the events. This might look a bit manual in terms of mapping what event is where. So, of course, we want to reduce all the manual things using scripts. So we have something called as make React. With this script in, we have a couple of things that we're doing. First thing, we're pulling in all the components and then removing prefixes. All the components are prefixed as MDC, momentum design components. So if I were talking about a button, it was called MDC button. But on my React, I don't want it to be MDC button. I just want it to be normal button component. So we're removing those. We are combining all the constants types, structure, how we have the folder structure in. We are trying to collate it and then bringing into a single common file. And here is where our events are being modified. So in HTML events, the syntax that we use versus the camel key we use in React, that's being happening here. And you have the template ready. This template is the exact one what you see on uh, that button JS, sorry, index.js, this one. So with this, we were able to resolve the event handling part as well. Last one, with respect to props and attributes, it's a little tricky as to mention how can the user understand each and every type of the attribute. Since we have a long list of components present within us, and we are doing a job of adding extensive documentation for each of them. So we decided we would pull in details from the documentation that we write into another script so that they'll be able to generate the code. And after a couple of logics in, we converted that from a script towards a package in itself. So since we were integrating with Storybook, you have a Storybook code preview package. We did a few modification on top of it, to add support to other languages as well. So currently we have React, we have Angular coming up. It's in progress. And I guess there's Vue in a couple of products in the company, so we would get that as well in. So all you would do is, if you observe between the two, these are your native ways of defining where you have card hyphen title, the hyphenated syntaxes. This is your camel case syntaxes. Even in terms of converting string to boolean to numbers, all that is handled. So all you need to do is tweak and play around with all the attributes changes that you need. It will reflect here, and whatever you want, you could take it from here and go. So these were some of the challenges that I mentioned here. I wouldn't, it would have been cluttered if I mentioned everything across. But yeah, day in and day out, we've been enjoying learning, facing these challenges to figure out how we move further along. Uh, so I did want to give you one walkthrough about using them. So this is another package. This is a React component now. This is a React file, and we're using it through Weave. And if you see here, this is the momentum design components that we are importing. There are other packages also being imported for assets. As I said, that's a monorepo. The corresponding things are imported here. And if you look into the home page, this is exactly the same list folder against React that we created. So if I go in here, yeah, component dist and React, and open my button, this is the same thing that we saw there, the reactified converted code. So all I do is consume it here, normal, this is your function component, uh, normally use it here. And if I go on dev, everything that you see here is momentum design components from your header to your side nav to this thing. So let's go back from here. I'll do a copy, go back to my space. Formatting is a bit off. Okay. And then import my card. With this, what you see here would also reflect here, and you need not make any certain changes to, I mean, it reduces your time in bringing up migration. Just an addition, so I've got another set in my stash ready. I would like to show you that. So yeah, we've got a card component here. You have an accordion, and you have the slider. So as I mentioned, all our components are accessible. I would also want to show you what that means. So it is completely accessible via keyboard. So you, you can make sure that your focus is not lost anywhere, and any actions that you do with your mouse can be done through your keyboard. Additionally, every action is possible through your voiceover. We've spent a lot of time in understanding how you can customize your voiceover to work out in the same way as the native works. As I mentioned, a couple of components we did override and recreate it on our own. Uh, so having them support the screen reader was a challenge again. So with this, I'm sure you won't be able to listen to it, but whatever is in the text here is the same thing that the screen reader would read out. So here I could like toggle in, then if I move further along, it'll not go into that continue button because it's hidden from your DOM. And yeah, moving across on your input form field, it will also give you validation. We've also put all those validations in place. Here I'm not showing you all of that, but this is just a very small sample about accessibility bit under our momentum design. So we spoke about all of this. We saw about like and then how we try to create components and how we can consume it in other products. Why did I bring this up today? Since that we're building, we've been migrating across to product already in Cisco. I would like to share a personal win that we had. Last week, we had this local conference in Cisco, which happened in San Jose. It's called the and momentum design system was being featured there. So we got a lot of traction through that. And it was a proud moment for all of us in the team. All those efforts gone behind the scenes being recognized. So I thought I'd share it with you guys as well. So with that, I would like to summarize. We spoke about web components. Why did we go with Lit? We can discuss more about that. Uh, because we wanted to work with every product that we are building in and not hampering them to change across a lot of things. And accessibility was one of the plus points. I didn't do a good job at showing across the importance of accessibility. I could create a whole new talk around it. That the amount of learning I've had around accessibility in this year. And of course, with this collating all of these points, we're trying to build in a consistent design system in place so that uh, Google we become very similar to how Google looks for their products. With that, I would like to end my talk. Thank you so much.